Hey, I'm back with round 5 from the 2025 Reykjavik Open, which just finished not too long ago. For this game, I was paired against Grandmaster Denis Kadric, who originally I believe is from Bosnia, but currently represents Montenegro. And yeah, this is an interesting game. He started with 1e4, and here I decided to play e5. Of course, for the last several years or so, I've been playing, I think, c5 exclusively against e4, but for this game, I decided I was kind of tired of playing into like all these sharp Sicilians. I wanted to get something solid, and I decided to go e4, e5. I've played e4, e5 many times before. I used to play it quite frequently when I was around 22, 2300, so I do have some experience here, but I hadn't played it in some time, so I definitely had a lot of prep to do for this game. So he goes knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4, Italian game, which I believe is his usual system according to his games. Here I played bishop c5, castles, d6, d3, knight f6, c3, and of course this is a very well-known position. There's all kinds of lines here, all kinds of theory. I decided to play a6 here. I can't say I really understand a lot of details about this position. Basically, black has a lot of useful moves. There's a6, there's h6. You can play with a5, you can play bishop b6, bishop a7, castles, knight e7, knight g6, bishop e6, and so on. So many different ideas here for both sides. And white also has multiple plans. They can play on the queen side with a4 and b4. This is kind of the more modern approach. Or they can play bishop to b3, as happened in the game, which is a bit of an older approach where white actually intends to play on the king side in this kind of position, and will eventually bring the bishop back to c2, not allowing black to exchange it with a future bishop e6. And so white's idea here in this position is typically to bring the knight around to d2, f1, and g3, and then try to build a slow attack on the king side. So this can actually get quite sharp. I played bishop a7, just a useful move, knight bd2, castles, h3, h6, just both sides making their typical moves here. Rook e1, rook e8, knight f1, bishop e6. And here he played bishop a4, which is an interesting move, pinning the knight on c6 and kind of provoking me to weaken my position with b5, which I did because I feel like black doesn't really have a better option than this, because this pin is annoying and white wants to play d4 and take over the center. So b5 here is needed, bishop c2, and now I played d5. And at this point, I started spending a little bit of time, but I did believe that I was still following my preparation here. This was one of like many different lines I looked at, because again, as I mentioned, white has a lot of different setups in the Italian game. So, I spent a couple hours looking at all kinds of different things, early bishop g5s and so on. And yeah, I really, do wish I spent more time with this position, because things end up getting very sharp. So e takes d5 is played, knight takes d5, knight g3, and now I played queen d6. And yeah, I'm still following my preparation here. Just a quick detail, white cannot take this pawn on e5, because there's a very typical trick in the Italian. This one I am aware of. Bishop takes f2 check. And if white takes back, there's queen f6 check, winning the exchange. And if white does not take the bishop, well then we won this really nice pawn on f2. So black won their pawn back and stands, I think, quite well. So pawn on e5 is poisoned, knight to g3. Now I play queen d6, because at some point you do have to defend this pawn on e5. And here my opponent goes knight h4. And so actually I was still in my book here, because I looked at this move earlier, because it's quite a dangerous move in this exact position. White tries to get knight h4, knight f5, and the attack can be very strong. Queen comes out to h5. And yeah, I wasn't so comfortable going into this, but when you prepare something before the game, it's hard to second guess yourself and then just play something different over the board. So I realized going in that this position is very sharp and dangerous, but what can you do? You have to kind of believe in your prep. You can't just prep something and then get to the game and then just like change your mind, and not play it, right? Then it's just, you're kind of wasting time at that point. So I decided to continue here. I played queen e7. So still following my book, and it's hard to really explain these moves. They're basically like computer moves. The queen hits the knight on h4. If knight f5, black wants to go queen f6 and defend h6, attack the knight on f5. f2 is also hanging behind the knight, so it's not that easy for white to continue here. So actually thinking maybe queen f3 is possible, and then I think my plan in this position was to go king h8, if I'm not mistaken. And this is just what I was thinking during the game. And the idea would be to try and follow up with a move like knight to e7, where when white takes on e7, I can then throw in a queen trade on f3 and double white's pawns. So try to kind of trade off one of white's pieces here with knight e7 and try and slowly rebuff the attack. Instead, queen h5 happened. And I definitely remembered looking at this move in my preparation because just optically, queen h5 looks extremely natural, developing the queen, defending the knight on h4, preparing knight f5, and so on. And yeah, here basically I realized that I didn't quite remember what I looked at before the game, which is a very typical experience, I think, for modern players, especially when we're preparing a lot with engines. The engine shows all these lines, everything seems understandable before the game, you're just bashing through, okay, if they play here, I'll do this, if they play here, I have this move. And then you get to the board, and then all of a sudden things are actually incredibly complicated, and you realize just how little you actually understand about this position. And in many cases, there's not a lot to understand. It's more just like super concrete. So the engine, of course, can just calculate a billion moves and just find all the defensive resources one might need to hold the position. But then over the board, these moves might just be very, very difficult to find. So at this point, I had a vague memory that my prep had said something like the move queen f6, which is a thematic move, I guess, for this position, just to defend the king side, and black attacks f2. But then white can go knight e4 here, so I was looking at this over the board, and I'm like, well, knight e4, what's my next move? I just have to go back queen e7. And I had a vague memory of looking at something like this along these lines when I was analyzing with the engine before the game. And yeah, I was trying to convince myself, yeah, this is kind of okay, knight e4, queen e7. And here I gave up a tempo, but I am threatening to play knight f6 next move and try to force some trades. And so if I can trade off a piece or two, then of course my position should be a lot safer. But I wasn't totally sure about all this, and then yeah, I started seeing some ghosts, like maybe white has ideas of bishop g5 or knight g5 and things like this. So bishop g5, for example, maybe is quite scary. So if takes, knight takes g5, although I didn't quite see the mate here after queen f6. I actually felt like black is surviving, so I wasn't super scared of this, but it did feel silly to play queen f6, knight e4, queen e7, just giving my opponent a tempo. And then yeah, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to proceed from here. So I started thinking at this point, because I had a second idea, and that was to play the move rook a d8. Because I had another vague memory from my prep that I remembered looking at this position a little bit and seeing that white isn't really threatening to take on h6 right away, because after takes, queen takes, I can play queen f6 here, just immediately challenge white's queen, and white's attack isn't really going anywhere thus far. So after a bit of time, I ended up going rook d8. I think I spent almost 15 minutes here. And yeah, now my opponent actually tanks for quite some time, longer than I did. I think for 30 minutes. He was thinking here, because it's not so obvious how white should continue. If the knight comes to f5, I'll play queen f6, and then there's no immediate follow-up. You can't go knight e4 because the knight on f5 is hanging. But instead came this move, d4, which definitely feels like a very critical move. And I did analyze this move before I played rook a d8, but of course not as thoroughly as I really should have. Because basically I just missed the main idea for white, which as after takes, the point is not to play any kind of knight f5 or bishop f5, which allows black to unpin, but rather the idea would be to sack on h6 right away. And now things are really really quite dangerous for black. There might be other moves too, by the way, maybe bishop g5 I can take with the queen. Excuse me, that's not working. But yeah, bishop takes h6 felt extremely dangerous over the board once my opponent played d4, because now after g takes h6, let's say queen takes, white's turning mate in 2 with queen h7, queen h8, so I can play queen f6 here to defend against that. But then I didn't like the following line: bishop h7 check, king h8, bishop g6 check, king g8, queen h7 check, king f8, and now knight h5. and my queen doesn't really have a great square. And if I take on h4, white maybe has multiple wins, but the one I saw during the game was rook takes e6, which looked extremely convincing because white is threatening queen g7 mate, queen takes f7 mate, queen h8 mate, 3 different mates in one. And yeah, I didn't see a move here that survives for black. And well, I still don't see it. So yeah, I do believe this line is just good for white. So after rook a d8 d4, of course, I started thinking again, and I did have a safe option, which I ended up playing, which was the move knight to f6. And this hits the queen, and I actually wasn't sure like why I should be in such huge trouble here, because white's queen is forced to go back. I bring my knight to f6. Maybe at some point I can take on d4. So I thought this was actually quite okay for me. But here comes queen f3, and white hits the knight on c6. I thought about taking here actually with idea queen takes c6 d3, where it seems like black should be winning back the piece. But yeah, I didn't really believe in it so much. So after e takes d4, for example, maybe white throws a knight f5. And yeah, the issue here is that let's say I play like queen c5 or something to defend my knight. Well, then knight takes h6 comes, and my king side is kind of falling apart. So my counterplay with like e takes d4, d takes e3 really just isn't leading anywhere. I'm going to get mated long before I do anything on the queen side. So I decided on bishop d5, which looked a lot more natural, and now queen d1. And it feels kind of weird for white. Like he played queen h5, and now I got like 2 tempi, knight f6 and bishop d5. But the problem for black is that white's pieces are still very, very well placed for the king side attack. So now white wants to play like knight f5, and there's all kinds of sacrifices looming on h6. Of course, I'm pinned on the e file and so on. So I considered a couple moves here, like getting the queen out, queen d7, queen d6. But yeah, I definitely didn't want queen d6 just walking into like knight f5 with tempo. And queen d7 didn't feel so good either. So I ended up going queen f8. Maybe one of these other 2 moves was better, because queen f8 I think definitely ends up in some trouble here for black. But yeah, at this point it's kind of just hard to come up with a move. I definitely don't want to go e4, which maybe prevents me from getting mated, but strategically I think this is really, really bad for black. Like knight f5, queen f8, knight e3, and now my bishop on e7 is actually kind of dead because of the pawn chain. And white wants to take my light square bishop, go bishop b3 somewhere. Maybe I'm not getting mated, thankfully, but strategically I think black is definitely in big trouble. Also, white's threatening to just take on d5 and win the e4 pawn, and certainly not obvious for black how to defend against this threat. So yeah, I played queen f8 here, and now my idea is, of course, I'm ready to take on d4. But here comes knight h5. So strong move, trading off my defending knight on f6 and trying to get white's queen back into the attack with queen h5. And now it's tough. Now, once again, it's very hard for black to find a move. For example, like if I bring my queen out again, like trying to defend the knight, well then knight f5 with a double attack, or knight takes g7 first, and then knight f5 is just bad. So yeah, I had a hard time finding a move other than knight takes h5 here, which I ended up playing. Like if I don't want to allow white to take on f6. If I go knight h7, then the queen can come in with like queen g4. There might be other moves as well. Knight f5 doesn't look half bad either, threatening g7, also hitting h6, and so on. So this, of course, all looked just extremely dangerous for me. But I ended up taking on h5. I mean, you gotta play something. So I spent another 15 minutes here. I took on h5. Now down to 30 minutes. And after queen takes h5, once again, black's position looks really, really dangerous, because white wants ideas like queen f5 and entering on h7. Although maybe g6 there I can play, so maybe that's not super dangerous. But white wants to go knight f5, and white definitely wants to sack on h6 and then go knight f5. So actually, originally, when I was going into this position, my idea was to take on d4 here. And I didn't think this sack was working. I thought bishop takes h6 takes. My first thought was rook takes e8. I have to take with the queen, because otherwise bishop on d5 is hanging. So queen takes e8, queen takes h6. And here I didn't see the mate, and I actually think black was surviving. After queen e6, bishop h7 check, king h8, bishop g6 check, for example, king g8. If white plays queen h7, king f8, queen h8 check, I'll run with king e7, and if knight f5, then I think I'm in time here. Number one, I can play queen f6 and just cover the checks, and I don't think I'm... Well, actually, no, this is dangerous. Queen h6 and bishop h7 wins black's queen. And after queen h6, king e8... Maybe this isn't so clear. Rook e1, the king is running to d7. So maybe this was possible, but I think also I can actually just like take on g6 with something. Maybe either way. I'm not really sure. Like queen takes seems possible. Check, queen g8, queen h6 check, king e8. And I'm up 2 pieces. Still, my king looks very, very vulnerable, but yeah, I don't exactly see how white's stopping me from running with king d7, king c8, and then reaching safety. So this attack didn't seem to be working. It can also take here. And again, I don't quite see how white checkmates us here, although admittedly very dangerous. But then I realized after queen h5 was played that if I take here on d4, maybe white can take on h6 and then just go knight f5 like this. And I don't know if this was my opponent's intention, but over the board this looked very, very dangerous. Because now white wants to take on h6 with the knight, and it just looks like my king is just caught. Like my queen is kind of stuck, and then white has knight takes h6, and then pulling the knight back, and my king is very, very open. So not 100% sure this is losing for black, but it looked very, very bad. And yeah, it's just not obvious how to defend here. We could try some moves like, I don't know, rook e6 maybe. I'm not really sure. Let's say white takes, and bishop takes, knight takes h6 check, king g7. Well, it looks like this is just mate. No, not quite. Queen g5, king h8 still. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe this actually isn't quite as bad as I thought in the game. In the game, I thought I'm just kind of getting mated here, but well, maybe I'm still missing something. But it does look very, very dangerous, even after a move like rook e1, just kind of bringing in white's last piece. And yeah, long term, my king is extremely weak here. But maybe there's something even better. I'm not sure. I don't remember if I considered this rook e6 move during the game. Maybe I could have gone for this after e takes d4. It's hard to say. I mean, maybe white has something stronger than sacrificing on h6, but not sure what that would be. So maybe this was actually a better chance. I haven't looked at the game with the engine yet. I probably will at some point just because it's very, very sharp. But yeah, for now, I'm just giving you folks my unfiltered thoughts. And so after queen h5, yeah, what else can I do? I considered rook d6 here. But then what I didn't like is a number of things, but also white can just like take the pawn for one. And I didn't see like what I'm doing here, like rook e6. And now yeah, it feels like white should have a lot of options here. I'm not sure what would be best, but maybe white can even just go like bishop f4. Just like keep the extra pawn, develop the second rook to d1. And yeah, I think black's position is quite miserable. So I also considered rook e6 to defend h6 this way. But what was the issue here? What I didn't like... Actually not totally sure now. Maybe rook e6... Okay, definitely had issues with this move like bishop g5, like this is possible, and then maybe even bishop f5, or just like simple rook a d1, and once again my position just feels extremely loose, and I'm not able to take on g5 or anything, so just feels like, yeah, black is a sitting duck. And that was also the problem with queen d6. I was hoping queen d6 maybe could defend here, defending h6, but once again, bishop g5 actually super annoying. And then if I take queen h7 check, king f8, not queen h8, king e7, knight f5, king moves, because here both the queens are hanging, so this wouldn't be very clear at first. But rather, white can just start with knight f5. with a really vicious double attack, hitting the queen and threatening mate on h8. There's no queen h6 because the knight covers. And yeah, no way to defend against both of these threats, so black can just resign. So bishop g5, I'd have to like move the rook somewhere. I don't know, rook c8. And yeah, this just felt super nasty, like rook a d1, for example. And it's just very difficult for black to find a reasonable move here. Maybe knight f5, actually, white can start with this one. There's no queen g6 because of knight e7 check with the discovery. And yeah, queen e6. Not totally sure, but yeah, I imagine like black is super close to getting mated here. Maybe it's not so bad. Let's try takes, knight takes h6, king f8. But minimum white can play like bishop f5, maybe knight f5. Yeah, still looks mighty unpleasant, but okay, actually I don't quite see the knockout, so maybe I could have still done this. I mean, compared to the game, I think almost anything honestly would have been a better try for black. Because in the game, I basically thought I'm just kind of busted here, and I end up playing this move g6 after another 10-minute think. And so at this point, I have a choice between just getting mated or like losing on time. But just by spending too much time, I played g6. I mean, I didn't believe in it. I knew, of course, he could sack and that it would probably be good. But yeah, everything else also looked bad. But maybe g6 was just making it way too easy for white because it was very obvious for him after g6 what to do. So maybe queen d6, rook e6, one of these would have been a better try. After g6, actually, the game is more or less over. Knight takes g6 is quite simple. If I take, bishop takes, I don't have a great response here. For example, I was thinking rook e6, white can take on h6, and then if queen f6, I think white has many moves here, but bishop h7 check seems to be very, very simple. If I take, then bishop g5 check, and white is winning the queen. Granted for 3 minor pieces, but white also has a million pawns and my king is super exposed. So I assume black is just completely lost here, and I would imagine that's correct. Maybe it's still tricky. You know, maybe this was still the way to go, but yeah, should just be bad. And then bishop h7 check. If I go king h8, then probably just bishop g5. And then the bishop will pull back, and yeah, I'm either getting mated or just losing all my rooks and stuff, and yeah, down way too many pawns. I mean, white already has 3 pawns for the piece, so they're not even down material, and they're continuing to collect stuff. So this is just game over. Other options were, let's say, bishop f7, but then bishop takes h6. If I take, queen takes, and I lose my queen. And if I move like queen e7, for example, then probably bishop g5. Actually, wait, not bishop g5. I think rook e4 was, to me, felt very convincing, followed by a rook lift either to g4 or h4. So for example, if takes, and king h8, then bishop g5, and there's bishop f6, rook h4, and yeah, black is losing the queen and getting mated. So after knight takes g6, I mean, I don't know why I even thought like there was any chances here to survive. I think I really should have just played any move. Even actually e takes d4, I think is harder compared to the game, because takes, knight f5, like we looked at, rook e6, maybe still not so easy for white. So g6 takes, and I go queen g7, because at this point I realized, okay, fg is just completely bad, but obviously queen g7 is not going to be working either. I am threatening g2, so you know there's a microscopic chance white blunders something here, but even the simple knight h4, black can resign, because I can't go e takes d4 in view of rook takes e8 and queen takes d5, just losing a piece. Rook e1 check, king h2. It's not enough for black. I'm down a piece. Everything is hanging in my position, and so knight f5 and so on. So that would just be bad anyway. But if I can't take on d4, then you know, what am I doing here? White's threatening the h6 pawn. White wants rook e3, rook g3. It's just resignable position basically. But what my opponent did is actually just much cleaner, much more forcing. Just takes on h6 right away, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Now he's up 2 pawns, so I took the knight, he just simply recaptures, and once again my king and queen are just completely caught, and my king is too open. And yeah, I'm just getting mated here. So I played queen d7, white played rook e3, and I just resigned because rook g3 is coming. My king is just completely stuck, and there's no chance of survival whatsoever. So yeah, brutal game. I mean, very bad game on my end for a number of reasons. Let's just go through them. Number one, I would say perhaps the biggest mistake I made for this game was in preparation. Just willingly going into this position, having only looked at it superficially with the engine, which at this point I've done this mistake enough times that I know not to do it. But unfortunately, when you're preparing like a million things before the game, you often do have to go very quickly through different lines. But ultimately, this was not a good decision by me regardless. I should have just not entered this position, especially given my opponent has very good experience in these kinds of positions, so likely knew what he was doing much, much better than I did. And yeah, and the position that we entered was the kind of position where one mistake can just end the game for black. Which I'm not sure if that's exactly what happened here. I feel like I actually made multiple bad moves before losing, but it did feel like the kind of position where, yeah, one wrong move and things go bad. So after the game, I did check like where I went wrong in my prep, and I actually did have rook a d8 as my main move. So that was kind of cool. I actually figured out the best move over the board. Despite not fully remembering what I'm supposed to do here. So I believe Compi does show rook d8 here as the best move, just kind of strengthening black's position with idea to meet any kind of move with queen f6, like any knight to f5, black goes queen f6 here. And apparently that's what I had to do after d4, was play this move queen f6, which actually was in my notes, and then this is where the line ends. I think it's like equal, but no, actually the line doesn't end here, because then I looked at knight e4, like obvious tempo move, black goes back queen e7, and apparently this position is equal according to the computer, which is no kind of position to like end your preparation in, because it's like it's still so sharp. White has so many moves like that they could play here, and it's just like, it's just playing with fire, basically entering this position against a strong grandmaster who has experience in this opening, without knowing like 100% what exactly is going on. Like for instance, white can go knight f5 here, and it seems like I have to give up my bishop, and that's not so clear. White can also just like take this pawn. So just take a pawn, and computer might say it's equal, but now I'm down a pawn, and so what am I supposed to do here? Okay, I guess now I see knight takes e5, queen takes e5, queen takes h4. I get the pawn back, and maybe black is okay. But this is the kind of work, of course, that should be happening before you show up to the game, right? You have to be looking at the position with your own eyes and really like analyzing it yourself. And I mean, to be honest, before the game, I did think like, ooh, this is kind of dangerous. I don't know if I want this, but I also had the feeling, well, maybe we won't get this position because white has a million options, black has a million options before this in the Italian game. So this was just like one line that I looked at. I wasn't really expecting that we would get it. And then when we did get it, I was like, oh, now I'm kind of caught in this like very, very chaotic position. Of course, I made other mistakes other than just prep. I believe, knight f6, was not right. Queen f6 was better there. But apart from that, let's see, I played queen f8 here. I'm not sure if that was best, but after knight h5 takes here, at least I should have tried something else. I think g6 was kind of just giving up, honestly. I should have tried queen d6 or rook e6, one of these moves. I felt like it's all kind of difficult for black, but at least I should have just really tried hard to find the absolute most stubborn move, make it as difficult as possible for the opponent, and hope for the best. And for all we know, I probably would have lost the game anyway, because I think the position is already getting difficult. If I understand correctly, back here queen f6 is like the only move to keep equality, but yeah, just because the game is difficult doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep fighting and trying to really just maximize our defensive resources as best we can. I mean, I think if there was a grandmaster in my shoes who had this like very difficult position with black, they would probably be spending all their time and finding the absolute most crucial defense and making it really, really hard for the opponent. And of course, I didn't do that. So bad prep and then really bad defense, I would say, over the board. But it happens. My spirits are still high. Lesson learned. So now I'm on 3 out of 5 going into last 4 rounds. Still everything to play for in the tournament. Still having a great experience here. Really enjoying actually preparing for the games, playing them. Even this game, I lost brutally. Wasn't the most enjoyable game. I'm still going to enjoy learning from it and hopefully getting some lessons that I can take away from the future. So yeah, life goes on. We keep playing chess, and thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Take care.